It's always lovely to be here at Jubilee Church Wirral. We have a special place in our hearts for this church. We just feel like you are our family because you were birthed out of the Spirit, but you were also birthed out of Jubilee Church Liverpool, where Dave and Danielle and Nikki all were. So yeah, we just hold a really special place in our hearts for you. So thank you so much for having me here today. Now, I'm going to start by shaking things up a little bit with a bit of a competition. Ooh, yes. Now, I am assured by the elders here that the prize for the winner is an all-expenses-paid holiday to the Maldives. Is that right, Dave? You haven't got any elder. Right, leadership. Don't split hairs. Leadership team have said all-expenses trip. Oh, to New Brighton, was it? Oh, I'm sorry. It was an all-expenses-paid trip to New Brighton. Oh, well. Okay. Here's the question for the competition, and if you're lucky, you might get some fish and chips out of Dave in New Brighton. If you are a member of the leadership team, whatever that means, and it's always slightly different in different churches, but you know who you are. If you're a member of the leadership team, please do not answer this question, okay? This question is not for you. The rest of you, do you know what the vision statement is for this church? If you think you know, put your hand up. Go on. Yes, you can read. Yeah, all right, that's allowed. Yeah, go on. Very good, very good. Now, with the aid of Google, this lady got it right. Thank the Lord for Google and apps and card machines. I've made a note to take that back to Liverpool. Do you know where you're headed? Every time you get on a train or a bus or in a car, you know where you're going. You may get it slightly wrong. You may make mistakes. You may go somewhere else before you get to your destination. But you always have a destination in mind. You always have an end goal. You know where you are headed. So what we're looking at this morning is Jubilee Church Wirral. Do you know where you, as a collective group, are headed? Do you know what you're aiming for? Because it's great, we have all these systems in place, don't we? We have systems like fantastic kids work, this ministry, this outreach, a brilliant welcome team. Your welcome team was superb this morning. We have a fantastic coffee area. We have all sorts of things, and they are good and they are necessary. Don't mishear me. But they are not our end goal, are they? So I want to encourage you this morning to familiarize yourself with the Jubilee Church Wirral mission statement. Our vision is to be an influencing church, releasing the kingdom of God to people, regions, and the nations. So locally, broader, and across the world. When you know where you're headed, then it gives you a motivation, doesn't it? Because if I just sent you out here now and said, just go somewhere, anywhere you want, and do what you like on the way, you would do what you like on the way. But actually, it would just be drifting, wouldn't it? So often, churches drift because they don't know where they're going collectively. You may say, yes, I know I'm bound for glory. I know I'm bound for heaven. And yes, if you've accepted Jesus and you are living for Jesus, then yes, you are. But corporately as a body, where are you headed? Proverbs 29:18 says, where there is no vision, people cast off restraint. But blessed is he who heeds wisdom's instruction. So your mission or your vision is your calling, it's your journey, it's your pursuit. It's your way of getting there. Now, we need to be very careful here not to mix up two things that sometimes do get mixed up: method and mission. Mission is where you're headed. I'm headed to New Brighton on an all-expenses paid trip that Dave's paying for because I got the question right. Method is how you get there. You can get to New Brighton many ways. You can walk, you can bus it, you can go on a skateboard, whatever. Method and mission. Mission always stays the same. Why? Because the gospel always stays the same. The gospel never changes, does it? But methods can change. And if we refuse to change our methods, then eventually we will kill the mission. So it's okay for methods to change. I mean, who would have thought 10, 15 years ago that in your notices you'd be saying, oh, we have a card reader at the back, and we have an app here for you all to download. We wouldn't have had that. There's an awful lot of things we wouldn't have had. Your mission is the same, but your method of getting there changes and develops with the passing of time. There's a very well-known case in business of a company that spectacularly failed because they didn't see the end mission. They just stayed with their methods. And that company you will all have heard of, it's Kodak. Kodak were the biggest consumer of silver in the world. They were massive globally. Because of film, you need silver to make film. And then digital photography came along. And here's the irony in this. Digital photography did not come from the outside. Digital photography was discovered by someone within Kodak. But Kodak refused to accept that that's the way photography was going. They said, no, this is the way we've always done it. This is the way we like it. This is what the people want. So they stuck with where they were. A few years ago, Kodak went under because they hadn't changed their methods in order to keep their vision. They had a vision, but sadly, the methods were outdated and nobody wanted film anymore. When we confuse method with mission, which so often happens, then the method itself becomes sacred. That's the thing we need to go for, or rather, that's the thing we need to stay with. And we all know it, don't we? We all know of individuals or churches or organizations that have said, nope, that's the way we've always done it, and that's the way we're going to stay doing it, and we don't want to change. This is our tradition, and this is the way we're going to do it. Don't mistake method for mission. And also, as we've alluded to earlier, don't misunderstand what mission is. Like I've said, mission is not just rocking up here on a Sunday, taking a seat, even just turning up to home group. Mission for a church isn't just attendance. Mission is having ownership. Having ownership like you do with your own home. Just a tiny, tiny little picture here. I saw, just before I came and stood up, Josh Frodsham. No, it was Josh, wasn't it? Oh, there he is. Hello, Josh. Sorry, I'm going to embarrass you now. He got up from there, and before he went to wherever he was going, he just went up and saw there was a little gap in the curtains and that you could see through, and he just closed it. Now, that is the tiniest, tiniest thing. But he's been brought up. He's been trained. He just had ownership. You know, when at home, if you don't like the way your curtains are arranged, you just, I'll just sort that out. I'll just sort that out. But when you go somewhere that you don't have ownership of, you think, oh, I'd better not do that. It's not my place. Josh knows it's his place to do that because he knows he belongs not just to the Frodsham family, but he knows he is part of this church. And the church is not this building, as we know. The church is every single one of you. You are the church. Have you got ownership of this church? Do you feel like it's yours, that you belong to it, that you can go and tweak a curtain, stick a kettle on, say hello to a visitor? Do you have ownership of it? We invest in all these things, these methods that we use, and they're fantastic. Don't mishear me. We need a great kids ministry. We need a great welcome team. We need all these things, but our aim ultimately is to lead people in a growing relationship with Jesus so that their lives are changed and so that other people look at them and say, whoa, what's different about you? Your life's changed. I'm interested in that. That is your collective aim as a church. In 1957, the USA decided to start investigating a space program. So they had this goal, a ridiculous goal in 1957, to put a man on the moon. Absolutely crazy. But they started their program. And they started it with what in those days were very basic electronics, and I'm not a scientist, all that stuff that they use. Very, very basic stuff today that we would just laugh at. But they started knowing that they didn't fully have the technology yet. And the first thing they did was they sent a small rocket just into orbit. Step one. And then it carried on and it carried on. And by the time they got to 10, 11 years later, was it 1968, the first moon? I should know. 69, yeah. I wasn't even born then. I was, and I remember it sadly. They started not knowing how they were going to get there, but trusting that they would. And did they get there? Yes, they did. And as you all know, there's more high-spec technology in your mobile phone in your pocket right now than there was on that space launch. That's how much things have changed. So that's really knowing your mission. What is your mission? Why have mission? And what are the foundations for mission? Well, the mark of a growing church, a church that's on a mission, I can assure you, is not perfection, as we all know. And you'll have heard this said many times before, but if you do happen to find the perfect church, what should you do? Don't join it. Absolutely. Because the minute you join it, you'll spoil it. Okay? There is no such thing as a perfect church. Understand that, first of all. When we live for Jesus and when we are growing and moving forward as a church, it's from that foundation that we see others saved and added and the church grow a bit more. Okay? It's not just about growth for growth's sake. It's about seeing people saved and added. My husband very kindly this morning stapled these together for me, but he stapled them at the bottom instead of the top. But actually, it's working quite well, actually. So what I want to ask you is, we all know things, don't we? We all know certain things. But I want to say to you, as a Christian, you know certain things about the Bible, about Jesus, about who he was, about what he's doing today, about your own journey. You know certain things. But actually just knowing stuff doesn't really do much. If these guys who knew about rocket technology, and they knew a ton about it, if they had just sat there and thought, yeah, I know about this, we'd never have got man on the moon because they actually did something about it. What are you doing with what you know? What are you doing with what you know? Hebrews 10 says, as followers of Christ, we are sanctified through Jesus on the cross. Jesus' death on the cross. And God is calling us to be progressively sanctified. Now, sanctified is rather a sort of posh, slightly outdated word that basically just means being made holy, being separate, being made more and more like Jesus. And Paul knew that to have a church that grows, you need people to grow. You can't have a church that grows if your people are stagnant and if your people are where they were 10 years ago. Where were you 10 years ago in your faith if you were a believer then? If you're a new believer now, I want to encourage you, keep going, keep growing. Do not sit where you were and stay the same. There is great confusion when people who profess to be Christians, profess to be saved, either don't own their faith when they're in the workplace. And then later on, it comes, oh, did you know that person was a Christian? Or did you know that person goes to church? No, I didn't know that. There is great confusion also when we say that we're a Christian, but our lives show something different. And we do something different. I thought that person said they were one of those born-again Christians. Yeah, they are. Well, then what? Yeah, I don't understand it either. Is your lifestyle matching up to what you're claiming is in your heart? In 1 Thessalonians, the writer makes it very clear. He who rejects this teaching isn't rejecting man, but rejecting God. The way you lead your life is to honor God so that others see Christ in you. God is reflected in your lifestyle and behavior. So I want to encourage you to understand who Jesus is, and that it's not just making a commitment and playing the part on a Sunday morning. It's day by day, going out there, living with joy through the difficult times, through the good times, living for Jesus. When people are writing adverts for TV, let's think of an item. Think of an item that gets sold in an advert. What, sorry? Bleach. Perfect. Perfect. Actually, that is a really, really good example. How attractive is bleach? It really is the most unattractive, uninteresting thing. Yeah, you can jazz up the bottle a little bit with pretty colours, but really bleach is the most unattractive thing. But it's incredibly useful and necessary, or some other similar disinfectant, for cleaning your bathrooms, toilets, whatever. What do they do on an advert? They don't say, hey, this is bleach. Well, they do, but they say this is bleach, this is brilliant. 99.9% of germs, covering themselves, aren't they? What are they really showing you in their 1-minute advert? They show you what it does. Yes, that's true. They do show you what it does. Let's go one step further. What are they trying to encourage you in with? Not just the bleach and what it does, but a lifestyle. That's what they do. Do you know it's exactly the same for us as believers? It's our lifestyle that demonstrates who Jesus is to other people. God is reflected in our behavior, our speech, and our lifestyle. Engaging in the mission. Now, how do we engage in the mission? I'm going to use the word engaged here a lot, and I hope you understand that I'm not talking about getting engaged to be married. I'm talking about engaged as in working together, okay? Engaged Christians advance the church's mission. How engaged are you with the mission and vision statement and the leadership of this church? Do you just go to them when something goes wrong and say, I need you to help me with this? And there's a place for that, don't mishear me. Or do you come to them and say, I'm with you I'm on this journey with you. I want to serve you, and I want to serve Jesus by serving you in order to be on a mission together, because I know what our aim is. I know what our mission statement is. Yeah, but only God brings growth, you say. Yes, only God does bring growth. He is the one who orchestrates growth. But guess what? He uses us. He uses us for growth. He will orchestrate it. Orchestrate it. But we're the ones that have to play the instruments. An analogy that I like to use, partly because I used to work for an airline, and I've probably used this here before many times, forgive me if I have, but there is a big difference on an airline between passengers and crew. And when I say crew, I don't just mean the two guys at the front in the flight deck steering the thing. Not that they do it like, well, they do actually, yeah. Passengers and crew, huge difference. You all know where you're going, or at least I hope you do. I hope you all know you've got on the flight to Madrid and not the flight to Barcelona or wherever. You all know where you're going. But some people on that flight make the flight happen, make the flight work, make it more comfortable, make it more enjoyable. But the vast majority just sit and receive. And that's fine on an airline. That's the way it should be. Can't have everybody, all 235 people, wandering around causing chaos. What I'm trying to say is, are you crew or are you a passenger in this church? Because there's a big difference. Are you along for the ride? Yeah, I'll see where this takes. I'll see what the church can do for me. I'll see what I can get. It's good. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I believe in Jesus. Or are you along to make a difference? If you're on the crew, I use that in the broadest sense of the term, you can affect where this church is going, the direction it's going in. You can affect the methods. So if you're sitting there thinking, yeah, I don't like the way this church does this, and I don't like the way this church does that, do something about it. Don't just necessarily come and ask these guys who are your leaders, you need to change that. If you see a gap somewhere, be a polyfiller Christian. Fill the gap. Woo! Thank you for that amen. I love it. Are you a living stone? Are you invested in the church? Are you, even as a young 18-year-old, comfortable with just going and closing a curtain that's got a gap in it? Tiny, tiny thing, but it demonstrates ownership. Or do you just come here knowing somebody else is going to welcome you, make you tea and coffee, do the this, do the that, do the that? I really want to encourage you to grow and be a living stone amongst the people here. You can accomplish far more in a church with 100 crew than you can with 1,000 passengers. The size of the church is not necessarily or in any way indicative of the life of the church. They may have fantastic, glossy worship times, and that's good. We can engage with the Lord during those times. But I know that what the team want here, well, I'm saying I know, I'm assuming you're the same as us in Liverpool. I hope they don't all bash me up afterwards. Oh, that was wrong, Charlotte. I'm assuming that they would rather have 100 crew members than 1,000 passengers. During COVID, there was a preacher who noticed that when we came out of lockdown, our churches had changed significantly. And he said this, his name was Tony Merida. Our hope is not in the return to normal. Our hope is in the return of the King. What is normal? How can we say that we're captivated by the glory of Christ and that we're dazzled by his grace and then not be compelled to rise up in response? Are you captivated by the glory of Christ? Are you captivated by what he's done in your heart? Are you prepared to rise up and say, yes, he's done it in me. I want to get on board. I want to be a crew member, not a passenger. I want others to see what I've got, and I want to give from the overflow. The overflow. Doesn't mean your life is perfect. Doesn't mean you haven't got problems. That's where the big mistake comes in, where Christians say, oh, well, I can't do this because I can't. No, there is always something you can do if you have the joy of the Lord in your heart, because the joy of the Lord is an overflowing thing. It is not a stagnant, sit-down thing. Do you have the joy of the Lord? Do you know where you're heading? Are you going to be a crew member? So often, people evaluate the church by what they get out of it. Evaluate a church, I would encourage you, by what you put into it. Don't go away and sit there over your Sunday lunch saying, well, they should have done this, they shouldn't have done that. Come and make a difference. Be an encourager. Get on the mission. Give, not just financially, although do give if you're not giving financially, because that is biblical and that is part of sacrifice. Yes, but I haven't got a lot of money to give. I'm sorry, that one doesn't wash. Look at the widow with her 2 coins. The 2 coins wouldn't have made a scrap of difference in that offering, but what it did do was it showed her heart, and God looked on that and loved her and blessed her. It's not about what you have. It's not about what you give. It's about giving from here. Give. Make a sacrifice with your time. Make a sacrifice with your car. Who can I give a lift to? Who can I give a lift home to? Be on the journey. Be on the mission. Advance the mission program of this church. Don't leave it to the few. We all have causes we're passionate for, and it's great to have causes. It might be politics. It might be animal welfare. It could be all sorts of things. And don't mishear me. There are some good causes out there that it's great to be involved with. But what is your main cause? What is the principal cause that drives you to get out of bed in the morning? What is the principal cause for you to smile your way through the day, even though you know you've got a difficult situation back at home to cope with? Some of the most joy-filled Christians I know are those with long-term chronic sickness. But you wouldn't know, because they are filled with joy. Yes, there is a time and a place to pray for them. But they are the people who walk into church, and so instead of saying, oh, I'm having a bad day again, please pray for me, they're the ones that are smiling on the door, greeting other people who are far healthier than them. Let the joy of the Lord be your strength, and that will give you the fuel for the mission. When we lose our focus, and we don't know where our mission is, I'll tell you what happens. Then you end up saying, yeah, I'll volunteer to go on the kids' work. I'll volunteer to go on the welcome rota, the whatever rota. I'll volunteer to put the chairs out and empty the bins or whatever. Because you're fulfilling your duty. Because if you do that, you might gain approval. Oh, if I do that, I might be asked to be a home group leader. Serving then just becomes backtrack. Filling a slot. Doing it because it needs doing. Yes, there is a sense of duty, but let it come from a heart of ownership, a heart of belonging. That's where it needs to come from. I want to help this family move forward. 1966, Walt Disney had a vision, and his vision was to create a theme park called Disney World. So he started doing that. And much like the space program that we talked about earlier, he started to get things in place. And they bought a plot of land, and they built and they did all the technical stuff that you need to do to get a theme park going. And then do you know what happened 4 days before the grand opening of the theme park? Anybody know? Sorry? He died, yes. He died 4 days before the opening of his theme park. Sad, but his vision lived on. His vision lived on. He had a vision. What's your vision? The early Christians didn't attend church. They made it clear that they were the church. We need to know that we are the church. Knowing Jesus means dying to self. Doesn't mean you don't take care of yourself. Obviously you do. But when you die to self, it means you put needs of others before yourself. Are you ready to embrace something greater? Something greater than just coming and enjoying church on Sunday? Are you ready to be on that journey? Because the primary object of any church should be, and I know it is with this church, it's not numbers. Yes, it's great to grow. Yes, it's great to have numbers filling your seats, but that is not the primary objective. The primary objective is being on the mission together, and for us as individuals to give more than we get in every sense of the word. So in rounding up, we've understood that this is not a numbers game, and that we have an input, but we also have an output. And don't overlook the output that this church here has already made. You've sent one of your best families to Zambia for a few years. You've sent a great family to the Netherlands. You've sent people to Crewe, and there will be many, many other places that I haven't listed there. You are a sending church. So it doesn't mean that being on the mission means, right, we've got to keep everybody here. No, you can't go, we don't want you. I mean, there's nothing more gutting for leaders of a church than when a really good family goes. It's like, oh no. You just have to say, God, you're sovereign. You're sovereign. We trust you. We don't know how we're going to get through without them doing this, that, and the other, but we trust you. Building a church needs individuals. Individuals who are rooted in the word. Individuals who are passionate about and growing in Jesus. Building a church needs people who are engaged in the mission. People who are crew. People who've stepped up from being passenger to saying, I want to be a crew member alongside you. Push forward. And one of the things that we do is we say to ourselves, yes, but, what if? What if? We can always say in any situation in life, what if? And I know that psychologists call this catastrophizing. When you assume the worst and you start thinking, yeah, but if I did that, no, then this could. The Bible doesn't say, think, what if? The Bible tells us, even if I lose my life, it will all have been worth it. So have you got an attitude today of even if? I'd love to encourage you to think through what it would mean for you to step up from being a passenger to being a crew member. Let me just pray before I hand back to Danielle. Father God, we thank you that you have put us in church to be family, that you've put people here in Jubilee Church, Wirral, to be family together, to be on a mission. And we ask, Lord, that this morning you would work in people's hearts, that they would know what you have done for them, and that from that overflow would be birthed an excitement to say, yes, I want to step up from being a passenger to being a crew member of this church. Lord, this only comes from knowing you, loving you, and sacrificing ourselves to you and saying, Lord, take us as we are yours. Do with us what you want. And Lord, not what if, even if. Lord, we are yours. We trust ourselves to your sovereignty. Amen.